All right, and then lastly, we're just going to touch on a few different cooking techniques because all of these are different types of reactions. So one of our first reactions is this Maillard reaction, and this is what causes food to brown. So this has to happen at high temperatures, and what we're getting is a reaction between the functional groups in our sugars and amino acids and that heat. And so we get this reaction that occurs. We get some new flavors. We get that browning color. It's a very delicious type of chemistry. Okay, sous vide cooking. This is really interesting. So again, water is a good thing for cooking because of its high specific heat. However, like I was saying, one of the problems is that we can leach a lot of stuff into the water. So sous vide, what you do is you place things in a sealed bag and then you can cook it in water. And this, will then hold for things that you normally wouldn't cook in water, like let's say salmon. Am I going to want to stick a piece of salmon in boiling water? No. But I could sous vide it by putting it in a sealed bag and putting that in the boiling water, and then I could cook it that way. And so sous vide takes advantage of the good ability water has to heat up and get to those high temperatures without having to make contact between the water and the food. Your microwave, all right, so what happens here is you've got a lot of energy coming from the microwave. The energy's high, but not high enough to actually break bonds. What you get is you get things rotating around. And so microwaves will penetrate just a little bit. And so you end up vibrating those molecules. You get the friction, and so you heat up. Because it only penetrates so deep, that's why if you take, let's say you make mashed potatoes and it's like Thanksgiving, so you have a ton left over. And you go to heat up the mashed potatoes, and instead of portioning out a small bit, you heat up the entire bowl at one time. Well, you're only going to get heat around the edges of it because of the penetrating power of the microwave. So you end up having to stir it a bunch of times and heat it in short bursts after you stir it each time. That way everything has a chance to be penetrated by those microwaves and vibrate and, rub against each other and heat up. Okay. We can do some food prep without having to use heat. So there's drying, there's curing. We can use salt. Okay. So if you salt something, we have that process of osmosis where we're going to get things that are going to move around. And so if I have a high salt area, my water is going to want to flow to that high salt area. So that will draw moisture out of food that way. We use these nitrates and nitrites to kill bacteria when we're curing things. Okay, and then can you think of anything else? Well, we can use a dehydrator. Okay, or has anybody ever had something like ceviche, where we use lime juice? So you take your raw fish and you put it in the lime juice, and the acidity of the lime juice starts to react, and that cooks your food there. Okay, so there's a lot of different methods we can use to actually prep food without ever having to heat it up. Okay, we can smoke things. This is definitely a low and slow process. So you have collagen. Over a lot of time, collagen converts to gelatin. Gelatin is more water soluble, so then you get something more tender. And then you get this pink color because you have this nitrogen dioxide that forms, and that interacts with the meat compounds, gives you a more acidic environment, and you get that pink color. And so smoking doesn't work if you try to do it quick flash. To get this conversion from collagen to gelatin to happen, again, suitable time. That's a really important thing. You have to have an adequate temperature, but you don't want to do it too high that you're going to burn it. You want to get it just to the right temperature, and then you want to let it go for a long period of time. Smoking meat is something that takes a good amount of patience. Okay, we can make emulsions. So mayonnaise is an emulsion. If we don't use an emulsifier to help get everything to interact with each other, it will separate into its two components that are not usually compatible with each other. So you get these I cannot speak, amphiphilic molecules. And so you have something that's polar on one end, nonpolar on the other end, and so then they can interact with two different things because of the polar and the nonpolar ends. This is really interesting. So you can make these little gelatin spheres using and exploiting properties of intermolecular forces. And so you get the right amount of stuff added, and you get these like little gelatin spheres that can form. And so you get these little things that they're edible, and they just look kind of funky floating around in solution. And then you can pull them out of solution and you can use them as like a garnish or a topping or something, like usually with desserts. You see this mostly with dessert making. Okay. There's fermentation, and so you're getting some anaerobic metabolism inside yeast. And so you convert your sugars into something that gives energy, and you byproduct with ethanol and carbon dioxide. And so we can intentionally ferment things, or some things, if they have the right stuff with them and you just let them sit, they will naturally start to ferment. And then we get distillation. And so distillation will vaporize things. We can collect that vapor and then we can purify them. So we can distill things that have been fermented. So a lot of alcohols are made via fermentation. And then we run it through a distillation column to purify them and get rid of all the gunk that we don't want to be drinking. And then we can get our alcohol out after that. So all these different cooking techniques. It's just chemistry. So I really like to cook. Cooking is a hobby of mine. I have a lot of fun experimenting in the kitchen and trying to come up with my own recipes. And I joke that it's just really edible chemistry. And so if you have a good grounding on basics of chemistry, you can really start to expand what you do in your own kitchen at home and start to really craft some really fun things to eat. So I really enjoy that. And it's super yummy.